You know that moment when the truth hits you. Not like a gradual realization, but like a speeding train. For Olivia Mars, that moment was the sight of blood on her immaculate white floor, and the man she was supposed to marry, the man who knew her deepest fears and desires, standing over a body, holding a gun. But the most shattering heartbreak wasn't the murder. It was the name she screamed at him, Dorian. And his chilling, empty correction. My name is Lucas Vance. Dorian was the man I made up for you. This is the story of how a woman gave her heart to a beautiful lie, only to discover that the monster in the shadow was the only thing that could save her from the darkness her own family created. Before we continue with the story, comment which city you are watching from. Also, subscribe to the channel so you won't miss any of our stories. Now let's dive into the story. The blood, a slick, dark wine, pooled at Olivia Mars's pristine white boot. It wasn't her blood. That was the only thing keeping the bile from rising in her throat. Her breath hitched, ragged and shallow, as she stared at the shattered pieces of the exquisite porcelain vase, now scattered beside the body of Dorian Gray. Just 15 minutes ago, she had been floating, deliriously happy, in the afterglow of his perfect proposal. The diamond on her finger felt heavy, a beautiful, dazzling anchor to a future she had only just allowed herself to dream of. Dorian, her impossibly charming, gentle Dorian, the man who ran a discreet, high-end import or export business, was on one knee in their penthouse living room, bathed in the soft, amber glow of the sunset. Now, the same light caught the metallic sheen of the pistol he held, not even looking at the mess he'd created. His eyes, the same ones that had looked at her moments ago with such boundless, adoring warmth, were cold, flat, and utterly devoid of anything human. It had to be done, Olivia, he murmured, his voice a low, melodic rumble that used to soothe her soul, but now scraped across her nerves like broken glass. He wasn't speaking to her, not really. He was speaking to the air, to a silent, unseen audience, explaining a simple, tedious chore. He got greedy. Broke the code. You know the rules. Rules. What rules? The only rules she knew were the ones they built their perfect life on: honesty, fidelity, kindness. Olivia, a brilliant architect who built homes that were sanctuaries, felt her own sanctuary collapsing around her. Her hands flew to her mouth, muffling a cry that felt too primal, too loud for this silent, awful scene. She wanted to believe this was a sick, elaborate nightmare, a scene from a movie. But the copper tang of the blood in the air was too real, the rigid stillness of the man on the floor, too permanent. Who are you? She whispered, the diamond on her left hand suddenly feeling like a brand. Dorian, still not looking at her, tucked the silenced weapon neatly into the small of his back, beneath the bespoke tailoring of his midnight blue suit. He finally turned, and the man facing her was a stranger. The sharp edges of his jaw were suddenly defined by something dangerous, something predatory. I am the man who loves you, Olivia, he said, and the sincerity in his voice was the most terrifying thing of all. He took a measured step toward her, but she instinctively recoiled, a small, pathetic shuffle that brought her foot closer to the body. But that is only the half of it. The part you've always known. He stopped, his gaze dropping to the floor, then slowly rising back to lock onto hers. The other half. I am the Grey Wolf. And this is my world. A faint siren wailed in the distant city below, not a police siren, but something sharper, faster. A sound that signaled arrival, not rescue. Dorian glanced at the window, a flicker of genuine urgency in his cold eyes. He had maybe 60 seconds. He had to decide right now, let her run, or pull her into the darkness with him. The love he felt for her was a weakness, a catastrophic vulnerability he had sworn to eliminate. Yet, seeing the pure, shattering betrayal on her face, he couldn't let her go. He couldn't go on without the light she was. He reached for her, not with the tenderness of a fiancé, but with the ruthless efficiency of a predator. You don't understand, Olivia. You think you've just seen a crime. You've just become a witness to a war. His voice was low, a command woven with an undeniable desperation. Come with me. Now. Or you're next. Do you really believe they'll let the fiancé of a dead man walk away with the truth? She was frozen, her mind a screaming blank canvas. The love of her life, a murderer. Her perfect future, a bloody lie. The ruthless hand that clamped around Olivia Mars's arm was the same hand that, only hours ago, had stroked her cheek and promised her forever. The contrast was a seismic shock, a sudden realization that everything she knew about touch, comfort, and security had been a brutal deception. Dorian Gray pulled her not towards the penthouse exit, but towards a reinforced mahogany door disguised seamlessly into the study's library wall. "Move, Olivia." "They're already on the service elevator," Dorian hissed, his gaze razor-sharp, fixed on the discreet security monitor embedded in the wall panel. He hadn't asked her to come, he had commanded it. The man who gently opened car doors for her was gone, replaced by a terrifying efficiency. Olivia's mind, however, was in free fall. Her deepest desire was order. She wasn't just an architect. She was a creator of stable, beautiful spaces. She designed buildings that stood against the ravages of time, of wind, of chaos. Her personal life was a mirror of her work, precise, organized, and utterly transparent. She yearned for predictability because, underneath her calm exterior, lay the deep, cold fear of her childhood. The arbitrary chaos of her father's sudden, unexplained disappearance years ago, which had left her and her mother adrift and vulnerable. She swore she would never be vulnerable again. That motivation, the desperate need for a solid, unshakable foundation, was the very thing Dorian had exploited, unknowingly, to win her heart. He was stable, he was successful, he was devoted. He was everything her father was not. And now, in one sickening, bloody moment, he had become the very chaos she feared most. She tried to wrench her arm free. "Let me go. I'm calling the police." He stopped, his grip tightening until it was painful. He didn't raise his voice, and that made it infinitely worse. "Do you think the police are coming, Olivia?" The man on the floor, Dorian Gray, was a key operative in one of the largest black market technology syndicates in the world. "And I am the one who keeps the peace. If I turn you loose now, you will be dissected, interrogated, and eliminated before dawn. Do you understand? I am the only thing standing between you and a very short, very final trial." His words, "Dorian Gray was a key operative," hit her like a physical blow. Dorian was the name of the man on the floor. "Then who are you?" she choked out, staring at the cold, beautiful face that had filled her dreams for 2 years. "My name is Lucas Vance," he said, the revelation devoid of drama, purely factual. "Dorian was the name you knew me by, the one I used for the legal front. The man on the floor was my subordinate, Dorian Zola." Lucas Vance. The revelation stripped away the last veneer of their life. He was a phantom, a lie, a name pulled from thin air. The grief was instant and absolute, deeper than the shock of the blood. The man she loved had never existed. He shoved the secret door open, revealing a tight, steel-walled service stairwell, steep and unforgiving. He pushed her forward. "Get moving. We're going down to the sub-level garage." As she stumbled down the steps, her mind flashed back to their first meeting. At a charity gala, where he'd complimented her design on the new City Museum wing, not with vague praise, but with specific, intelligent critique. He was handsome, yes, but it was the depth of his attention, the feeling that he saw her, that had captivated her. It was a lie. Halfway down, a voice, sharp and commanding, echoed up the stairwell. "Grey Wolf. Status report." Lucas didn't slow, pulling Olivia along mercilessly. "Status. Compromise contained. Asset extracted. Moving to extraction point Gamma." A moment later, they burst into the concrete cavern of the private garage. It was here she saw the first of the key supporting characters, a terrifying silhouette leaning against a black armored SUV. This was Dominic Shaw. He wasn't overtly large, but his posture, a coiled, deadly stillness, screamed trained violence. He wore tactical gear beneath a deceptively casual jacket, and his eyes, when he turned, were calculating, assessing the threat level of the hysterical architect attached to his boss. Dominic was Lucas's shadow, his head of security, and the only person Lucas implicitly trusted. Dominic's loyalty was not to the man named Lucas, but to the survival of the Enterprise, to the rules of the Grey Wolf. His eyes barely registered Olivia as human. She was just a high-risk variable. "The asset is compromised, Alpha," Dominic reported, his voice a gravelly monotone, devoid of inflection. He wasn't talking about Dorian Zola's body upstairs. He was talking about Olivia. The realization made her spine prickle with fear. She was the asset. Lucas ignored Dominic's implication. Olivia, get in the back. Now. She hesitated, her feet refusing to move. She needed one honest answer, one single thread to hold onto in this abyss. The money, she gasped, tears finally streaming down her face, blurring the harsh lines of the garage. All the charitable foundations we supported. All the money we gave. Was that a lie too? Lucas stopped at the back door of the SUV, his hand hovering over the handle. He didn't look at Dominic or the incoming threats, he looked only at her. His mask slipped just for a second, revealing a flicker of raw, gut-wrenching pain. No, Olivia, he said, his voice dropping to the intimate whisper she knew so well. The money we gave to those kids' scholarships, to that women's shelter. That was real. That was mine. That was the part of me trying to be the man you deserved. And it is the one thing I regret most, dragging that part of me into this pit. He didn't give her time to process the devastating admission. He pushed her into the SUV, slamming the door just as two black motorcycles, headlights blinding, roared into the garage. The air instantly filled with the sharp, metallic smell of high-caliber ammunition. Dominic was already driving, tires squealing, pulling the heavy vehicle into a desperate, sharp turn. He grabbed a headset and barked orders in a language Olivia didn't recognize, a mix of Italian and coded commands. As the first bullets pinged off the armored shell, sending vibrations through the seat, Olivia curled into a ball, clutching the diamond ring on her hand. It felt impossibly heavy. It was a promise of forever, given by a lie, in the same moment a life was ended. A war. Lucas had said. And you're next. The true conflict wasn't the gunfight raging outside the SUV. It was the internal war raging inside Olivia Mars. Her desire for order and truth was clashing violently with her fear of chaos and her undeniable, stubborn love for the monster beside her. He was a lie, a killer, and yet, he had just confessed that he genuinely tried to be good for her. She looked at Lucas Vance, who was calmly reloading a secondary weapon, his expression granite hard. He was the Grey Wolf, a Mafia boss. But he was also the man who used to make her coffee exactly right, who remembered her mother's birthday, and who cried with her when her childhood dog died. What hidden depths were left to uncover? And could she, an architect who built life, survive in a world built on death? The armored SUV was a steel cocoon in a hurricane of violence. Olivia Mars was pressed against the plush leather seat, her body absorbing the percussive thump-thump-thump of bullets striking the chassis. Each impact was a brutal reminder that this was not a movie. This was a hunt, and she was the prey. Outside, the city was a blur of neon and terror. Dominic Shaw drove with an unnerving, fluid calm, weaving through traffic with a preternatural sense of timing, while Lucas Vance, the man she once called Dorian, sat beside her, a portrait of lethal focus. He wasn't panicked. He was processing, calculating, his eyes flicking between the side mirrors and the grim set of Dominic's jaw. His calmness was the most alienating thing of all. He belonged here, in this chaos. He thrived in it. She, on the other hand, was coming apart at the seams. Her architect's mind, trained to find patterns and create order, could find none. There was only the screech of tires, the shattering of glass from nearby cars, and the sickeningly final sound of impact as Dominic expertly sideswiped a pursuing motorcycle, sending it cartwheeling into a storefront. "They're not ours," Dominic grunted, his eyes fixed on the road ahead as they plunged into the darkness of an industrial tunnel. "The pattern is too aggressive. Too public. This isn't a territorial dispute." "I know who they are," Lucas said, his voice a low growl that vibrated through the vehicle. He glanced at Olivia, and for a moment, the cold mask of the Grey Wolf cracked. He saw her, truly saw her, crouched and trembling, her face pale with a terror so profound it was almost silent. A wave of something that looked like regret, sharp and painful, washed over his features before being suppressed. "Hold on." Dominic took a hard right into a darkened loading bay, the steel door slamming down behind them with a deafening clang, plunging them into near-total darkness and sudden, echoing silence. The absence of noise was somehow more terrifying than the gunfight. Olivia's ragged breaths filled the void. The vehicle's interior lights flickered on. They were in a vast, empty warehouse, the kind of soulless concrete box she usually demolished to make way for her warm, light-filled creations. This was his world, grey, cold, and functional. A place to hide, not to live. Lucas turned to her fully, his movements deliberate. "Olivia, I need you to listen to me very carefully. There is no time for tears, no time for shock. That comes later. Right now, I need your mind. I need the architect." "The architect?" she spat, the word tasting like ash in her mouth. "That woman is dead. You killed her when you pulled that trigger." "No," he said, his voice firm, cutting through her burgeoning hysteria. "I saved her. And now, you need to save me." He leaned closer, the familiar scent of his expensive cologne, a mix of sandalwood and something uniquely him, filling her senses and creating a dizzying cocktail of love and hate. "The man I killed, Dorian Zola, wasn't just my subordinate. He was a traitor. He made a deal to sell our entire network infrastructure to a rival." "A rival?" she asked, the term sounding absurdly corporate for the carnage she'd just witnessed. "They're not a family. They're not a cartel. They call themselves the Meridian Group," Lucas explained, his eyes burning with an intensity that demanded her focus. "They are corporate raiders who operate in the shadows. They don't take over territories, they absorb them, asset stripping everything of value and executing anyone who stands in their way. They are ghosts. Utterly ruthless. And Zola was about to hand them the keys to my entire world on a silver platter." Here it was. The first major plot twist. This wasn't a simple gang war. This was a hostile takeover by an invisible, lethal entity. The men hunting them weren't just thugs. They were professionals. Cleaners. "Why are you telling me this?" Olivia asked, her voice trembling. "What does any of this have to do with me?" This was the moment. The inciting incident that would irrevocably shatter the barrier between her old life and her new one. "Because Zola was smart," Lucas continued, his gaze unwavering. "And paranoid. He didn't just write down the access codes and server locations. He encrypted them. He locked the master file behind a biometric and cognitive security system of his own design. A digital fortress. He was supposed to transfer the key to Meridian tonight. I stopped him before he could." He paused, letting the weight of his next word settle. "Dominic has been trying to crack it for the past hour from a remote system. It's impossible. The final failsafe is a query, a complex architectural problem. Zola was obsessed with your work. He followed your career, studied your blueprints, called you a structural poet." A cold dread, slick and oily, began to seep into Olivia's veins. She remembered Dorian Zola now, the quiet, almost sycophantic man who occasionally joined them for dinner. He would ask her intensely specific questions about structural mechanics and aesthetic philosophy, his eyes gleaming with an unnerving admiration. She'd found it odd, but harmless. "The failsafe," Lucas said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "It's based on the load-bearing calculations and spatial sequencing of your first solo project. The Harrison Bridge Pavilion. He built his digital fortress using your blueprint." Olivia felt the air leave her lungs. The pavilion was a project she designed years ago, a complex, almost esoteric piece of architecture known for its counterintuitive structural solutions. It was a piece of her soul, a testament to her belief in elegant, stable design. And now it was the key to a criminal empire. He knew that only someone with an intimate, foundational understanding of that design could bypass the final lock, Lucas stated. "He made you the key." He reached out, not to grab her, but to gently take her hand, the one with his diamond ring. His touch was electric, a phantom limb of the love she thought she had. "Meridian doesn't know you're the key yet," he said. "But they will. They'll analyze the code, they'll trace Zola's interests, and they will find you. And when they do, they won't ask nicely. They will take that information from you, piece by piece. My world, Olivia, is violent. Theirs is surgical. It's worse." He squeezed her hand. "I need you to open it. Help me get the data so I can move my people, protect them, and fight back. I can protect you, But only if you are with me. There is no third option. There is no running away. Not from them. This was the crucial decision. She was no longer a civilian caught in the crossfire. She was the epicenter. Her genius, the very thing she was most proud of, had been twisted into a weapon. She could refuse, try to run, and be hunted by a faceless, terrifying organization. Or she could step into the darkness, align herself with the killer she loved, and use her knowledge to fight back. Her fear was a roaring inferno, but beneath it, a tiny, cold spark of determination began to glow. He had destroyed her life, but he was also offering her the only path to survival. The architect in her, the problem solver, saw the brutal logic. The woman in her, the one who still remembered the feel of his hand in hers during quiet Sunday mornings, was drowning. Olivia Mars stared at the diamond ring, then up at the man, Lucas Vance, who had purchased it for her. It was a tangible piece of the colossal lie he'd built, but it was also a heavy, physical anchor to a love she couldn't simply switch off. The shock of the blood, the terror of the chase, and the sheer audacity of his request were all warring within her. He made you the key. She looked not at Lucas's beautiful, deceptive face, but at his eyes, cold, hard, and desperate. In that desperation, the architect saw the structural flaw in his own empire, the one weakness only she could mend. "The Harrison Bridge Pavilion," she whispered, her voice husky with disbelief. He used the cantilever sequence and the hydrodamper schematic as a cipher. "Yes," Lucas confirmed, his relief a visible, almost terrifying slackening of his shoulders. He knew he had her. Not through love, but through logic. "You know it. No one else does." Olivia slowly stood up, brushing the clinging remnants of fear from her evening gown. She wasn't yielding to him. She was yielding to the necessity of survival and the cold, compelling challenge of the problem. "If I do this," she said, her voice regaining its professional steel, "I'm not doing it for the grey wolf. I'm not doing it for you. I'm doing it for the woman who designed that structure. It's my work, and I will not let a traitor use it to fuel a corporate murder cartel. When this is over, you walk away. I walk away. And you tell me the truth about Dominic and everything else." Lucas's lips curved into a faint, grim smile, the smile of a predator who has successfully lured his prey into the cave. "Agreed. Now, the workstation is in the van's hidden compartment. Dominic is setting up the connection." They moved to the back of the armored SUV, where Dominic Shaw had already opened a concealed panel, revealing a sophisticated server rack and satellite communications gear. The atmosphere was thick with unspoken tension, a triangle of lethal competence, cold loyalty, and unwilling genius. Dominic glanced at Olivia, his suspicion palpable. He clearly thought she was a dangerous liability. "We have 60 minutes, Grey Wolf," Dominic warned, his tone flat. "They know the general area. We need to be invisible before they localize the satellite trace." The next 40 minutes were a dizzying blur of intellectual intensity, deepening the connection between Olivia and Lucas in the most twisted way imaginable. She was forced to sit shoulder to shoulder with the man who had shattered her world, speaking a language only they truly shared, the esoteric language of complex design and engineering. The compression ratios on the primary load-bearing arches are the input for the initial key string, Olivia dictated, her eyes glued to the cascading lines of code on the screen. "But it has to be inverted. The pavilion was designed to resist upward shear." He reversed the polarity. "Reversed the polarity," Lucas repeated, typing with the smooth, practiced speed of someone whose survival often depended on technical proficiency. He was the only one who understood the inner workings of his network and the language of his lieutenants, meaning he was the only one fast enough to enter the codes as she deciphered them. Their breathing was synchronized, their minds locked in a frantic, intimate dance. He paused, looking at a line of encrypted data that she couldn't explain. "This sequence. What is the structural relevance of this block?" "That's not structural," Olivia replied, frustration sharp in her voice. "That's aesthetic. It's the numerical sequence of the depth of the copper leaf panels on the roof, the ones that catch the sunset. It's purely decorative. It holds no mathematical function." "It holds sentimental function," Lucas countered, his gaze intense. "That was the first time Zola praised your work to me." He called it structural poetry draped in gold. The realization was a soft, sickening wave. Zola hadn't just used her work, he had weaponized his admiration for her work. And Lucas, the man who claimed to love her, had noticed the subordinate's obsession and yet still allowed him close to their life. The line between Lucas Vance the loving fiancé and Lucas Vance the grey wolf blurred again, making it impossible to separate the deception from the devastating truth. She hated him, but her brain was wired to work with his, to solve the puzzle, to survive. This shared vulnerability, this desperate reliance on each other's specialized knowledge, fueled a perverse kind of attraction. It was the thrill of two highly intelligent people working in perfect sync under lethal pressure, a bond stronger and more authentic than any polite dinner conversation they had ever shared. Suddenly, Dominic slammed his fist on the console. Trace detected. 30 seconds until they can triangulate our position. We have to move. We're not done. Olivia snapped, adrenaline spiking. I have the final sequence, but it needs to be run through a spatial inversion algorithm based on the orientation of the surrounding city blocks. It's the ultimate red herring. The secret is in the landscape, not the structure. Lucas, Dominic growled, pulling a detonator from his belt. We have to sanitize and exfil. Wait. Lucas commanded, his hand shooting up, stopping Dominic mid-movement. He chose Olivia's intellect over his consiglier's caution. It was a staggering show of trust, and a massive test of their fragile alliance. Tell me the coordinates, Olivia. Fast. She rattled off a series of coordinates, not for the building, but for specific points on the distant city skyline as viewed from the warehouse window. Lucas typed furiously, his fingers dancing. Across the keys. A green access granted flashed across the screen, followed by a torrent of encrypted data. The sheer volume of the data, the scale of his empire, it was staggering. Got it, Lucas breathed, pulling the master drive from the bay. Now, we move, Dominic snarled, hitting the detonator. As they scrambled into the driver's cabin, the warehouse behind them erupted in a controlled, deafening blast. The air filled with concrete dust and smoke. Lucas had chosen survival and the data over clean retreat, and in doing so, he had risked their lives on her ability to solve the ultimate structural problem. The danger had escalated, but in the white-hot crucible of crisis, a genuine, albeit perilous, partnership had been forged. Olivia was now in possession of his most terrifying secret and was an active participant in his war. Could this impossible connection, built on lies, solidified by blood, and powered by intellect, ever become a real love? Stick around, because the biggest twist is coming, and you'll want to be subscribed to see how Olivia handles the midpoint revelation. The armored vehicle screamed through the back alleys of the industrial district, the controlled blast a fading echo behind them. Olivia Mars was physically exhausted, but her mind was humming, hyper-aware. She clutched the console for balance, the metallic scent of gunpowder mixing with the sterile air of the sub's cabin. She had helped a killer. The genius that built beautiful sanctuaries was now actively preserving a criminal empire. Extraction point Gamma is compromised, Dominic Shaw announced, his voice tight with controlled frustration. He glanced in the rearview mirror, his gaze lingering on Lucas Vance and then, suspiciously, on Olivia. Meridian Group is closing down all the usual safe houses. They moved faster than anticipated. Lucas studied the map feed projected onto a small screen. They're not just chasing the data, Dominic. They're showing us how deeply compromised we are. They are executing a siege. We need a fallback. He looked at Olivia. We need somewhere they won't look. Somewhere connected to the one thing they don't know about me. My apartment is out, Olivia stated immediately. They probably had a tail on me the second Zola was compromised. Not your apartment, Lucas said, his voice dropping to a low, intimate murmur. The only true safe house I ever built. The one I purchased right after we met. I built it for us, Olivia. I built it with the intention of leaving the wolf behind. This deepened the romantic connection through shared vulnerability. He was revealing a secret space, a tangible piece of his plan to leave his dark life, a plan that centered entirely on her. It was a lifeline thrown across the chasm of his betrayal. You built a third life? Olivia asked, the layers of deception dizzying her. I built a future, Lucas corrected, his hand reaching out and briefly resting on her arm, a plea for understanding. A clean slate. A place where Lucas Vance was just your husband, not a leader of men. The hideout was in an unassuming brownstone in a quiet, affluent neighborhood. Inside, it was minimalist and immaculate, a complete architectural contrast to their lavish penthouse. It was functional, beautiful, and utterly clean. As soon as the reinforced door locked behind them, the tension momentarily evaporated, replaced by a suffocating silence. Lucas set the master drive on a central workstation. I need to decrypt the network files now. Dominic, secure the perimeter. 2-mile radius. As Dominic nodded and moved to an internal comm system, Lucas turned to Olivia. He was no longer the ruthless commander. He was just Lucas, exhausted and defeated. I know I owe you the truth, he admitted, running a hand through his perfectly styled hair, now disheveled with strain. All of it. Starting with how I became the Grey Wolf. He began to talk, explaining the organization wasn't founded on brutal, old-world crime, but on a resistance movement against the rising, silent tyranny of the Meridian Group, a cabal of oligarchs who controlled everything from global shipping to state security. His Mafia was an underground collective designed to regulate the black market, prevent total chaos, and ensure that the powerful didn't swallow the world whole. The lies, he claimed, were protection. The murder of Zola was necessary to prevent a global collapse of his counter-network. Olivia listened, her initial skepticism giving way to a grudging acceptance. It was an organization of killers, yes, but perhaps they were lesser devils fighting a greater evil. Just as she was about to ask her next question, Dominic's voice, cold and measured, cut through the quiet. Grey Wolf. I have a problem. Dominic held out a secured tablet. On the screen was a detailed, high-resolution photo of Olivia's architectural portfolio from 10 years prior. Not the pavilion, but the detailed schematic for a high-security offshore data storage facility, a project she had worked on right after university. Meridian Group just sent this out to all major Black Ops organizations, Dominic explained, his eyes narrowed on Olivia. It's a bounty. They're offering $10 million for the asset, the architect, and proof of the data location. But that's not the problem. Lucas frowned, taking the tablet. Then what is? The data center in the picture, the one Olivia designed, Dominic continued, his voice dropping to a near whisper. It's where your father's files were stored. The files you have been trying to recover for 5 years, ever since you took over. The room spun. Lucas's jaw went rigid, his face draining of color. Olivia felt a chill that had nothing to do with the outside air. Her father. The man who had disappeared, leaving behind only vague rumors of corporate espionage and a massive, unsolved mystery. She had been haunted by his absence, driven by the desire for order to compensate for his chaos. Lucas looked from the tablet to Olivia, his control utterly annihilated. Your father. Vance. His last name was Vance, Olivia confirmed, her voice barely audible. Why? What does my father have to do with your files? Lucas slowly looked at the file name on the schematic, then back to the encrypted files on the master drive they had just risked their lives for. The chilling realization hit them both simultaneously. Your father wasn't a corporate spy, Olivia, Lucas stated, the revelation a brutal punch to her gut. Olivia Vance. My predecessor. The founder of the Grey Wolf. The man who disappeared. He swallowed hard, the magnitude of the lie he'd been living for 2 years crashing down. He was my father. The midpoint revelation. Olivia's long-lost father was not just a genius architect, but the original Grey Wolf, Lucas's own father. And Lucas, the man she loved, the man who had stolen her name and lied about his own, had been searching for the file she had unknowingly designed a secure location for. The romantic tension became a paralyzing emotional catastrophe. Lucas had pursued her, not just out of love, but because her name, her professional specialty, and her family legacy were inextricably linked to his war. He had fallen in love with the architect who unknowingly held the key to his their father's, last secret. You knew, Olivia breathed, the pain so sharp it tasted metallic. You knew who my father was. You knew I was Olivia Vance when we met. No. Lucas pleaded, taking a desperate step towards her. I only knew his name was Vance, and he was an architect. I used the name Dorian for 2 years to protect you from the possibility of a connection. I only found out your father was the founder when Zola compromised the network files, when I realized he was targeting you through your work. I fell in love with Olivia Mars, the woman. I swear, I never knew until today that the woman I love is the daughter of the man I'm fighting to protect. The stakes were now personal, historical, and deeply romantic. They weren't just fighting Meridian. They were fighting the lie that was the foundation of their entire relationship. The silent brownstone, meant to be a sanctuary, had become a tomb of shattered trust. Olivia Mars's emotional landscape was laid bare, a devastation more total than any structural collapse. Her father, the architect of order in her early life, was the original Grey Wolf, the creator of the chaos she now inhabited. The man she loved, Lucas Vance, had used a fabricated life to get close to the daughter of his predecessor, the man he called his father. The symmetry was agonizing. You took his name, Olivia whispered, the realization a cold stone in her gut. You are not Lucas Vance. You are the son of the founder, and you named yourself after the man you were looking for. The files you sought are the legacy of my father, and you used me to get to them. Lucas stood frozen, his eyes showing a genuine, crippling agony that was perhaps more authentic than any emotion he'd ever shown her. I took his name out of respect, Olivia, out of necessity. My birth name is irrelevant in this life. He wasn't just my mentor. He raised me from the age of 10 after my own parents were neutralized by the nascent Meridian group. He taught me everything, including the code. When he vanished, I swore I'd protect his legacy and find his truth. I found you, his daughter, working on the very type of high-security architecture he pioneered. The connection, the professional symmetry, it drew me in. But the love, Olivia, that was real. It became the greatest vulnerability I have ever allowed myself. His desperate plea barely registered. All Olivia saw was the architecture of the deception. The foundation was a lie. The structure was manipulation. The passion and the shared vulnerability in the van felt like a cruel, calculated necessity now. You knew my deepest desire was to solve the mystery of his disappearance, she countered, her voice shaking with controlled fury. You watched me mourn a man you knew was a criminal kingpin. You let me believe he simply abandoned me. And you did it all while wearing the diamond you bought with blood money. She ripped the engagement ring from her finger and hurled it across the room. It struck the steel-reinforced wall with a pathetic, hollow ping. This confrontation was the darkest hour for their romantic connection. The relationship had not just been threatened. It was completely severed by the weight of their shared, explosive past. Before Lucas could respond, Dominic Shaw, who had been monitoring the exterior, barked a sharp, urgent command over the comm system. Grey Wolf, they're here. They found the residual satellite trace from the data transfer. Not a large unit, but high-end. 2 black SUVs, heavy arsenal. And they've got someone with a signal jammer. We're on lockdown. The situation had gone from critical to seemingly hopeless. They were cornered in a sealed room, their lifeline to the outside world, their communications, suddenly severed. The Meridian Group had brought the war directly to the last place Lucas thought was safe. Lucas instantly snapped back into the cold, ruthless leader, suppressing his emotional collapse. Dominic, prepare the sub-level exit. We're going to use the maintenance tunnels. Negative, Alpha, Dominic reported, his voice tight. The jams are localized. I can't reach the system controlling the tunnel access. It's manual override only, from the outside panel, next to the main garage door. One person has to go out. The seemingly insurmountable obstacle. One of them had to risk death to open the path to escape. Lucas moved to grab a silenced pistol from a hidden cache, strapping a harness containing the master data drive to his chest. I'll go. No, Olivia said, a surprising, hard resolve settling over her features. She walked toward the back of the brownstone, where a small utility window offered a view of the back alley and the tunnel entrance control panel. I'll do it. Lucas stopped, his expression fierce. Absolutely not. This is my fight. You are not sacrificing yourself for my war. This stopped being your war the moment you told me my father created it, she shot back. And if the Meridian Group gets that data drive, thousands of people who rely on your organization for balance will be exposed to a real monster. That makes it my problem now. Besides, she continued, her voice chillingly calm, you need to protect the data. The master drive is your one chance to neutralize them. I'm the expendable asset here. She was forcing him to confront his deepest fear, using her, sacrificing her, for the greater good of his world. A loud, metallic crash echoed from the front of the brownstone. They were breaching the door. Time was up. Lucas, agonizingly, slowly lowered his weapon. He knew she was right. His value was with the data. Her value was in the knowledge to open doors. He looked at her, his eyes filled with a mixture of overwhelming love and a terrible, self-loathing acceptance. If you get outside, he said, his voice raw, you run the second the door cycles. Do not look back. I will find you. Olivia didn't return his gaze. She didn't believe the I will find you part, and she didn't care. She was moving to protect her father's legacy, not his. She opened the small utility window and squeezed through, dropping into the cold, shadowed alleyway. She was alone, in the darkness, facing down a world of assassins, with nothing but her knowledge and her desperate need for truth. The situation was hopeless. Olivia was outside the defenses, exposed. Lucas was trapped inside, forced to rely on the woman he'd betrayed to save him. Despair was total. The cool night air hit Olivia Mars's face, shocking her senses back into sharp clarity. She landed softly in the alley, her heels clicking precariously on the rough concrete. The silence was immediate and profound, broken only by the distant, accelerating pulse of two black SUVs rounding the corner of the main street. Meridian was here. She sprinted toward the back wall of the brownstone where the manual override panel for the sub-level maintenance tunnel was located, a nondescript metal box sealed with a simple electronic lock. Her fingers, despite the cold, flew across the keypad. She didn't need the code. She knew the physical structure. The panel wasn't the lock was the pressure sensor beneath it, a common structural failsafe she used in her own designs. Inside the brownstone, Lucas Vance and Dominic Shaw were bracing against the door, the heavy steel groaning under the force of the Meridian Group's hydraulic breaching tools. The air was thick with the grit of pulverized concrete. They'll be through in 10 seconds, Grey Wolf. Dominic yelled, his hand tightening on the grip of his rifle. Lucas didn't answer. He was staring at the utility window Olivia had just used. A devastating realization was dawning, a cold, hard truth that made the anguish of the last hour feel secondary. He hadn't just been betrayed by his subordinate, Zola. He had been outplayed by the Meridian Group, and he had nearly let that tactical mistake cost him the one person who mattered. He realized his entire existence had been built on a false binary, either the Grey Wolf or the loving fiancé. But in that moment, watching Olivia choose to run toward danger, he saw the missing component, courage. Her decision was not born of love for him, but of a fierce, inherent moral strength to protect what was right, her father's legacy of keeping chaos at bay. That was the foundation he should have built on. The real love wasn't the lie he created. It was the shared DNA of purpose. He had been the one clinging to the past and the pain of his missing mentor, his mind closed off to new solutions. Olivia was the architect, the forward thinker. He realized the data on the drive, the legacy of their father, was useless if they couldn't read it. The files were encrypted with a second-layer quantum lock, accessible only through a specific, proprietary device that his father used. A sudden flash of memory, his father, the original Vance, tinkering with an old, obscure piece of structural analysis equipment in his study, calling it his Rosetta Stone. Lucas spun to Dominic, his voice ringing with renewed purpose. The files are useless without the key. We can't run. We have to retrieve the decoder. It's in the abandoned station, the one beneath the Harrison Bridge Pavilion. The Pavilion. Olivia's first project. The source of the cipher. The very place Zola was obsessed with. It was the only place their father would hide his most critical secret. The turning point was now. They had to stop running and attack the problem at its structural root. Outside, Olivia had pulled a small, silver pin from her hair, an expensive ornament Lucas had gifted her. She inserted it precisely into the micro-gap between the pressure sensor and the plate, overriding the lock just as the Meridian SUVs skidded to a stop 20 feet away. The lock clicked open. Olivia ripped the panel off, revealing the tangle of wires beneath. She didn't know which wire controlled the blast doors, but she knew the electrical flow, the simple power dynamics of her own architecture. She had less than 3 seconds before the Meridian enforcers would spot her. "Lurid yellow," she whispered, her hands shaking as she pulled 3 wires free. Simultaneously, the ground beneath Olivia shuddered. She heard a low, metallic groan as the sub-level tunnel door ground open, revealing a dark, concrete maw of escape. She had done it. A figure detached itself from the Meridian SUV, tall, commanding, and dressed in a suit as precise as Lucas's, but with a chilling air of calculated cruelty. This was Silas King, the head of Meridian's Global Enforcement Division. The central antagonist had finally revealed himself. "Olivia Vance," Silas purred, his voice amplified by a discreet "Izzy, you've caused a terrible disturbance in the market. I suggest you drop the wire and step away from the Grey Wolf's toy. We know what you are looking for." He didn't know about the data drive. He knew about the decoder. He was waiting for them to lead him to the pavilion. Olivia saw her chance. She pulled a 4th wire, a redundant ground line, and snapped it off. A small, controlled electrical flash erupted from the panel. The momentary burst of light attracted Silas's attention just long enough. She scrambled into the tunnel opening, pulling the control lever inside to cycle the blast door closed. She saw Lucas and Dominic already running down the tunnel towards her, the master drive clutched tightly in Lucas's hand. As the heavy steel door slammed shut, sealing them in the pitch darkness of the maintenance tunnel, Lucas reached her. He didn't speak. He simply wrapped her in a fierce, protective embrace, a reunion born not of tender love, but of mutual survival and a profound, wordless respect. "The decoder," Lucas gasped against her ear, holding the data drive up. "It's at the pavilion. Silas knows we'll go there. We have to get there first." Olivia pulled back, her fear replaced by fierce determination. "I designed the maintenance route under the pavilion. He knows the structure, but I know the weaknesses. We'll use the city itself as our weapon." The key to solving the central conflict was realized. The fight must happen at the Harrison Bridge Pavilion. They were united, not by romance, but by the necessity of a shared mission and a deeper understanding of the family legacy they both carried. The maintenance tunnels of the city were a labyrinth Olivia Mars knew intimately, having designed segments of their ventilation and drainage systems. She led Lucas Vance and Dominic Shaw through the concrete arteries, their footsteps echoing the frantic beat of their hearts. They emerged not into the light of the city, but into the echoing, subterranean darkness beneath the Harrison Bridge Pavilion. The pavilion itself was an architectural masterpiece, a glass and steel structure that appeared to float over the water. Its true core, however, lay beneath, in a decommissioned power station. This was where Olivia's father, the original Vance, had operated and hidden his most crucial tools. "The decoder is in the sub-level utility closet, next to the main hydrodamper," Lucas instructed, his voice low and tight as they navigated the steel catwalks. "It looks like an outdated structural diagnostic box. Nothing more. Dominic, secure the area. Olivia, you're the eyes. Tell me every flaw in this structure." The romantic subplot was no longer about soft words and tender touches. It was about the synergy of their intellects. Lucas trusted her life with his, and Olivia trusted his ruthless competence. They were a unified force, 2 halves of the Vance legacy. Suddenly, a voice, slick and cold, cut through the darkness from the level above them. "Olivia, dear. Always chasing ghosts. And Lucas, running home to Daddy's toys." Silas King stood on a platform overlooking them, flanked by 4 heavily armed Meridian enforcers. He hadn't just followed them. He had anticipated their move and was waiting at the destination. "You knew we'd come here," Lucas stated, his weapon raised, his eyes narrowed. "Of course," Silas sneered, descending the stairs slowly, enjoying his theatrical advantage. "This isn't about the data, Grey Wolf. It's about the truth of your father's power. Your father, Olivia's father. A man of 2 families. A grand manipulator." What truth? Olivia demanded, stepping out from behind Lucas, her defiance fueled by the pain of her past. This was the main antagonist delivering the most surprising and satisfying twist. The truth, my dear, is that your father wasn't running from the Meridian Group, Silas revealed, a cruel smile spreading across his face. He was running from the Grey Wolf. He didn't found the resistance. He created it as a corporate rival to his own main organization. The Grey Wolf was a side project, a cover. Your father, the original Vance, was my co-founder and the true leader of the Meridian Group all along. The revelation hit Lucas and Olivia like a physical blow. Their entire narrative, resistance, self-sacrifice, lesser evil, shattered. Olivia's father wasn't a noble victim or a resistance leader. He was the head of the very corporate murder machine they were fighting. He had created the Grey Wolf as a sacrificial lamb, a smokescreen to divert attention and traffic. The files you stole, Lucas, Silas continued, pointing a gloved hand at the master drive, are not Grey Wolf network schematics. They are the Meridian Group's complete asset list and command structure. Your father was about to retire, eliminate his Grey Wolf problem, and consolidate his empire under a new banner. He didn't vanish. He went into hiding to finish the process. When Zola tried to sell those files, he wasn't betraying you. He was trying to sell them back to me, the rightful second-in-command. Lucas's face was a mask of cold fury and devastating realization. The betrayal was complete, total, and generational. Every sacrifice, every life taken in the name of the Grey Wolf, was a lie. Where is he now? Lucas growled, abandoning the weapon, throwing it to the ground. This was no longer a gunfight, it was a reckoning. Dead, I assure you, Silas said with finality. He became too much of a liability, living in the shadows. But before he died, he left me a final gift, a plan to activate the real security on the data, the quantum lock. Only the proprietary decoder can open the file. And now you've brought it right to me. As Silas gestured to his men to advance, Olivia made her move. She didn't have a gun, but she had the structure. The hydro damper, she screamed at Lucas. The failsafe is designed to flood the lower levels if the bridge's load capacity is exceeded. Lucas understood instantly. He hadn't been an honest man, but he had developed a genuine, shared language with Olivia. He was already sprinting toward the giant, rusted wheel of the damper system. Silas ignored Olivia, focusing his fire on the armored Dominic and the fleeing Lucas. Dominic! Buy me 2 minutes. Lucas roared, as he began to strain against the massive wheel. Dominic Shaw, the ultimate loyalist, roared and charged the 4 enforcers, drawing their fire and creating a perfect, lethal distraction. Olivia didn't help Lucas turn the wheel. She ran to the nearest structural pillar, using her knowledge of the pavilion's core instability. She kicked out a tiny, seemingly insignificant concrete block she knew contained the seismic pressure release sensor. The sensor, now exposed, registered the violent conflict as an immediate catastrophic stress on the bridge above. Warning: structural integrity compromised. The station's old automated safety system shrieked. A massive surge of water, already primed in the old dam, began to rush into the lower level. Silas and his men were instantly distracted by the icy, rising flood. Lucas, straining every muscle, finally turned the wheel enough. The decoder in the utility closet was now submerged, but the water was creating enough pressure to prime the final failsafe. The box is flooded. Lucas yelled over the roar of the water. It's waterproof. Olivia screamed back, running to him through the rushing current. Now run the code. Do it from the external shell. Lucas, using the knowledge they had shared in the van, used a thin metal wire to connect the external shell of the still-submerged decoder box to the master drive. The current of the water completed the circuit, triggering the quantum key. In a flash of blue light, the master drive unlocked. Lucas had the list, the true master list of the Meridian Group. Silas King, waist deep in water and enraged by the structural brilliance of his foes, fired his weapon. The bullet missed Lucas by inches, striking the wall above. You lose, Silas. Lucas yelled, holding the unlocked data aloft. The Grey Wolf is dead, but the data lives. And I'm going to use it to clean up the mess our father made. As the Meridian men retreated up the stairs to escape the deadly flood, Lucas and Olivia scrambled onto a high catwalk. Dominic, wounded but alive, followed close behind. The climactic resolution was complete, the master list was recovered, the central antagonist was defeated, at least for the moment, and the truth of their father's betrayal was revealed. Their darkest hour led to the triumph of their shared courage and intelligence. The hydrodamper system drained the lower levels of the pavilion as quickly as it had flooded them, leaving behind a slick, metallic smell and silence. Olivia Mars, Lucas Vance, and Dominic Shaw stood on the catwalk, the Meridian enforcers gone, swallowed by the confusion of the sudden flood and the fear of the unknown. Lucas held the master drive, its light blinking with the promise of catastrophic data. The central conflict was resolved, but the personal fallout was just beginning. Olivia looked at Lucas, the water dripping from their clothes and onto the wet metal grating. "Your father, our father, was the real monster," she stated, her voice quiet but firm. "Everything we risked, every lie, every death was founded on his betrayal. What happens now?" Lucas didn't look heroic or triumphant. He looked heavy, burdened by the realization that his entire life's purpose, to protect his mentor's legacy, was a tragic, elaborate deception. "The Grey Wolf is dead," Lucas said, his gaze sweeping over the structural skeleton of the pavilion. "It was never a resistance. It was a market tool. I was a distraction, a pawn in a game I never understood." He looked down at the master drive. "But this is real. This is the Meridian Group's spine. Their operations, their funding, their entire hierarchy." He looked at Dominic. "Dominic, the Grey Wolf network is dismantled. The leadership is dissolved. You are free. Take what you need and disappear. Use the contacts our father built to protect yourself. You have my word, I will not come looking." Dominic Shaw, the granite-faced loyalist, merely inclined his head. His eyes held a flicker of surprise, perhaps even respect. "And you, Alpha?" "I'm going to fulfill the only true purpose the Grey Wolf ever should have had," Lucas stated, looking at Olivia. "Exposure. The world doesn't need a shadow organization fighting another shadow organization. It needs sunlight. I'm giving this data to the proper, non-compromised authorities, and then I disappear. I clean up the mess Vance made, and then I disappear from the market completely." The moment was charged. He was offering redemption, and more importantly, he was offering to leave the darkness forever. He had chosen justice over power. Olivia finally stepped forward, placing her hand gently on his arm. She felt the tension in his muscles, the lingering trauma of the night. Her anger had subsided, replaced by a profound, exhausted understanding. She had witnessed his true self tonight, not the gentle fiancé, and not the ruthless Grey Wolf, but the capable, deeply moral man who chose to destroy the empire he inherited to serve the greater good. "You won't disappear alone," she said, her eyes meeting his. "You told me you built that brownstone for us, to be just Lucas and Olivia. You risked your life to save me, even after I tried to abandon you. You gave up your power for my truth." She reached up and lightly touched the scruff of his jaw. "The man I fell in love with was real, Lucas. He was just trapped inside a cage of lies. Now the cage is broken." The romantic subplot was resolved with a fulfilling and earned conclusion. Their love wasn't based on the lie of the Grey Wolf, but on the shared, ultimate vulnerability of their lineage and the intense, undeniable connection forged during the crucible of shared adversity. The romance had survived because Lucas chose to dismantle the source of his power and his deception. A faint sound of movement echoed in the tunnel. Dominic was gone, dissolving back into the shadows from whence he came. Lucas pulled Olivia into a tight embrace, a hug that conveyed 2 years of withheld truth and a lifetime of commitment. "I love you, Olivia Vance," he murmured into her hair, using her true name, the name that tied them both to a complex, betrayed legacy. "And I will spend the rest of my life proving that the man you fell in love with is the man who will keep you safe." Weeks later, the global press was consumed with the Meridian Files, the largest leak of corporate and criminal espionage in history. Silas King and dozens of high-ranking oligarchs were being pursued across 3 continents. The world was beginning to heal from a sickness it hadn't known it had. Olivia and Lucas sat on a quiet, sun-drenched beach in the Italian Riviera. She was sketching in a notebook, not buildings, but small, perfect designs for a new life. Lucas had shed the tailor-made suits for linen and simplicity. He was just Lucas, retired and free. He slipped a small box into her hand, not the diamond ring, which remained in the flooded, abandoned brownstone, but a simple band made of recycled, gleaming steel. No more lies. No more diamonds bought with blood, he said, his eyes filled with peace. Just structure. Just you and me. Olivia smiled, slipping the band onto her finger. It felt light, secure, and infinitely stronger than the weight of the past. They had faced the darkness, uncovered the painful truth of their father's betrayal, and found a clean, honest beginning in the wreckage. They chose hope, love, and a future built, finally, on a solid foundation. We have come to the end of the story. I hope you enjoy it. Let us know in the comment section. Don't forget to like, subscribe and hit the notification bell so you won't miss any of our heartwarming and loving stories.